right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Frank Analysis. I'm your host, Franco. I'm joined today by Ryan Grimm, American author, journalist, and bureau chief for The Intercept. He's a contributor to The Hill and former bureau chief of HuffPost. Thank you very much for being here, Ryan Grimm. How are you?
I'm all right. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, so we're here to discuss some of our disagreements, and hopefully we can come to an understanding. I believe in working outside of the privately owned election system via direct action, mutual aid, and opting out of the system to disempower corporations. While Ryan Grimm, I believe we can. Ryan Grimm believes that we can still reform the system by working with a duopoly. Correct?
Yeah, yes, working within.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I don't. What I would add is that maybe one difference is that I have no problem at all with direct action and working
Okay.
outside the system. I think it's essential
Okay.
to influencing the system. Like pressure from the outside influences things on the outs. Pressure from the outside influences things on the inside.
Mm.
Some some folks, though, maybe I don't know if you're in this camp, don't have that same belief that both are okay. That people should do their own thing, but that everybody should be doing direct action, and nobody should be doing, electoral politics or that type of.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to get to that question like in more depth later on, but first I want to start with a tough question. Do you like my new logo and profile picture? Since you criticized my profile picture on Twitter.
I like it a lot. I think it was impact journalism,
Mm.
making change in the world. I do. I think it looks good. How's
All right,
how's
so
mine?
before
How's mine? Do you think I should
the
ditch
child
the
one,
like the
I
little
don't know.
child one?
I don't know. It's up to you. Like I have no
No.
problem with what people choose to have their profile pictures as long as it's not offensive. But yeah, but before we get into our disagreements on strategy, I want to start by asking you about your choice of working for The Intercept. This publication doesn't have a good track record of keeping their whistleblowers safe. Reality winner Terry Albury and Daniel Hale are prime examples of that. With Reality winner, she was arrested for giving classified documents to The Intercept. The FBI documents reveal that it was because of negligence that helped lead federal investigators to Winner. Apparently, an unnamed reporter spoke to a government contractor and revealed where the documents were postmarked from. And then whistleblower John Kiriakou claims that the unnamed reporter in the document was Matthew Cole, although that's what he claims.
Hmm.
With Terry Albury, The Intercept in 2016 had sent two Freedom of Information Act or FOIA requests for documents that they had already received from Albury. In those FOIA requests, there was specific info identifying the names of the documents, which led to the FBI linking Albury's activity on FBI information systems. With Daniel Hale, him and Jeremy Scahill appeared at several public events, spoke on the phone occasionally, and would send unencrypted messages by phone, which then led to him being found. In all three of these cases, it was the fault of the reporter, and not only that, but Pierre Omidyar has spoken out against whistleblowers prior to the Intercept launching. And then Barrett Brown, who I had on the show recently, who's also a whistleblower, he stated that he stated before that the Intercept journalist Sam Biddle was involved in his imprisonment. So, do you think that the Intercept is a safe place for whistleblowers to send information to?
So I got there just before the Reality winner
Mm.
arrest, and since it's been 4 years, there has not been a source that has been exposed. I think that it is not safe for any whistleblower under our surveillance system. It's not 100% safe for any whistleblower under our system to leak to any media outlet. The diff What I'm proud of at the Intercept is that the difference between us and other major outlets that work with whistleblowers is that we 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 take them and their lives very seriously. So we did institute actual internal reforms. I don't know anything about the other situations that you that you mentioned. I mean, I don't know anything internally about them. I wasn't there yet. That actually I think have been effective so far. It doesn't mean that it's 100% foolproof. I think if you're an NSA contractor or somebody inside the NSA, your ability to get documentation out of the NSA and into the hands of reporters without the NSA detecting you is close to impossible. Now, after she was arrested, we spent millions of dollars on her defense, and that is something I'm proud of, because the New York Times, Washington Post, other outlets like that, when one of their sources gets grabbed, which happens, like it happens a lot, they wash their hands. They don't care, because the source is no longer useful to them. They have a completely instrumental transactional relationship with sources that are constantly leaking classified information from the highest realms of the White House and the intelligence community. Those ones get treated well because they're going to continue leaking information, but that's information that's in service of the narrative that the intelligence community wants out there. Whistleblowers who are blowing the whistle on wrongdoing and have a cache of documents, and that's all they've got because they like an Edward Snowden type, he doesn't have more documents. New York Times, Washington Post, they don't care about protecting those sources because they don't have anything more to give them, but we do. So no outlet is perfect, for sure. But we're in the 4 years I've been there, we've been doing the best that 5 years, whatever I've been there, doing the absolute best that we can against the most sophisticated surveillance state in the history of humankind.
So do you think that that there's problems with all outlets, like when it comes to whistleblowers and releasing dangerous information, or quote unquote dangerous information that that we all should be hearing about? How come like Julian Assange was able to stay quiet about his source? But
stay quiet about his source. Stay quiet about his source.
Other reporters are still, they're living well off. Like they're getting paid like six figures.
Stay quiet about his source. His source went to prison.
In terms of the DNC leak, like he didn't release who gave him that source. I mean, who gave him that information?
Oh, I thought you were talking about Chelsea Manning.
No. That information was out, but the DNC leaks, we still don't know officially who it was.
So we never said anything about who a particular source was. If the intelligence services are, so if you want to talk about the Reality Winner situation, I think it was unfortunate that a lot of people took the FBI's warrant that they published at face value. Like the Intercept is like the number one journalistic enemy of the FBI and the NSA. Imagine if you're the NSA or the FBI, and there's this extremely well-funded organization that has legal help. That's key, because nobody can sue us into oblivion, and that has major encryption technology and other technology, and is actively soliciting leaks about the national security state. Like that, like we are their like journalistic enemy number one. And so the way that they crafted that arrest warrant that they published was very precisely produced propaganda to get people to believe what you're saying here. Here's the unfortunate fact. Reality Winner had emailed our podcast Intercepted and asked for a transcript. This is all public information. I'm not telling, it's been buried, but it's public information. I'm not revealing any secrets here. She had emailed Intercepted and asked for a transcript of one of the episodes. Normal reader request. Somebody at the Intercept fielded her request, sent back the transcript. When they learned that this document had been leaked, which they would have learned when we published it or learned when we asked them for comment, They then searched to see who had downloaded this document, who had viewed this document on their NSA computers. They then cross-referenced that with who had communicated with The Intercept. Bing, they got one hit because she had previously, unbeknownst to us, we didn't know the identity of the person. She had previously communicated with The Intercept's podcast. So instantly, that's their number one suspect. They went to her house, they interrogated her, she confessed. They then wrote the arrest warrant and published it in such a way that people would say, oh, look, the reason that they found her was because The Intercept made these mistakes. The Intercept did make mistakes, but if The Intercept had acted absolutely perfectly, she still would have been caught. The only way for her not to have been caught was to not publish anything from that story.
I think that maybe there are some ways that I think it could have been safer. Like, for example, like it was like they were able to track her via postmarks, right, from the documents.
No, they tracked her. They tracked her because of that communication. That they learned that after all this came afterwards. They tracked her because of that communication back and forth. So, I mean, that's one tip to any whistleblowers. Like, if you have ever communicated with an outlet, it commented on their website, emailed one of their reporters just about something completely separate.
Yeah.
Give it to a different outlet. Give it to an outlet that you have never had any communication with at all, because they will find that if it was on an unencrypted channel.
I personally, if I was a whistleblower, I would feel really cautious about releasing it anywhere. And
Yeah.
With how they're surveilling everybody,
You would have to.
I particularly would be really skeptical and afraid to submit it to The Intercept, considering not just that, the track record, but also Pierre Omidyar. I just want to read this part here from Whitney Webb's article discussing Daniel Hale, which I can link in the chat in the description, where she says, unlike Assange, Cahill's publication and work are funded by eBay billionaire and the owner of PayPal, Pierre Omidyar, who is very well connected to the public and private sector, as well as to the U.S. intelligence community. Omidyar's past public statements show hostility towards whistleblowers, whom Omidyar had likened to thieves prior to The Intercept's founding. So what are your thoughts on that?
Weird. I mean, I disagree with the idea that a whistleblower is a thief. He funded The Intercept in 2004 with Glenn Greenwald, Jeremy Scahill, and Laura Poitras for the express purpose of securely housing Edward Snowden's archive, and building journalism around that, and then expanding from there. I don't agree with that view of his. If that's what his view is, or that's what his view still is. I've met him for 30 seconds at a holiday party in 2017, and have had zero other engagement from him or message from him. So I don't spend any time thinking about it either.
Okay.
Because I don't want, I kind of don't even want to know like what he thinks about things. Because if I know, then I can't unknow it.
So do you think that it would be, you'd have more freedom and, feel like you don't have to, like you have someone like watching over you and have to consider, what your, what the corporate owners of whatever outlet you work for, like what their beliefs are and stuff. Like, for example, Omidyar here, like if he has those beliefs on whistleblowers, he might be hostile towards them. And then like we look at the track record. Would you
right? But if he did,
I was just going to ask you if you think it's safer to be an independent journalist, and you think that you'd have more freedom to do what you want as an independent journalist as opposed to working for a corporation.
Well, it's not a corporation.
Or like one funded and owned by billionaire, or
that's a really interesting question, and I might have an unusual answer for you on that. So, but also on the previous question, Omidyar also funds the Press Freedom Defense Fund, I think is the name of it, which runs in collaboration with The Intercept, and that is the entity that significantly funded the legal defense of Reality Winner, but also It's the only press freedom defense fund in the world that funds the defense of whistleblowers. Like all other press freedom defense funds that exist defend journalists, which we do as well. Like if a journalist is getting sued or getting prosecuted, we will fund their defense. But we also do whistleblowers. Most other journalism operations, journalism funds say, no, we don't do that. We only do journalists. Whistleblowers, they take risks and they're responsible for then whatever the consequences are of those risks. So I can't imagine why he would be spending that much money if he thinks that these whistleblowers are bad people and are vandals or whatever that phrase was that he's. I mean, I don't disbelieve you that he said that at some point, but I have no reason to believe that's
But
his
you
current.
see why some people may be skeptical of getting information from outlets that are owned by billionaires.
Yeah, so that for sure, of course, in an ideal world, billionaires wouldn't exist. But here's the take you might not agree with, but actually maybe you partly will agree with. So in my ideal, so for the first premise is this, that if you need, like what I was always told is that why is Noam Chomsky a public intellectual? What's the definition of a public intellectual? Well, it's somebody whose income is completely independent of any private source, and therefore the existence of tenure can give you then this ability to just speak for the public and to the public. Like that is the only thing that is your responsibility, and there can't be consequences for you for taking a position that runs counter to whatever paymasters are trying to make you do. Setting that up is not easy, and so if you are pure, here's the problem with being purely crowdfunded. If, let's say, your audience is made up mostly of people who like Bernie Sanders, and they want content around the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. If you then have a story that is critical of that wing of the party, you're going to probably lose subscribers. And if you lose subscribers, you are going and you're a normal human being, it's going to get in your head, and you're going to think, okay, well, this is a good story, but is it worth it? I'm going to take a $40,000 hit this month if I lose these 4,000 subscribers or whatever I think that this might cost me. And so then maybe you hedge the story a bit. Maybe you don't do the story. Maybe you hedge some criticism. If the crowd already knew everything that they should know, then they wouldn't need these journalism outfits. The crowd kind of thinks it knows everything it needs to know. Like if you've been on, twitter.com, you see that there are a lot of people with very strong opinions already, before they've read articles. And so you can end up being beholden to your audience in a way that can be unhealthy. And so I think when people say that they're independent, they have to interrogate that a little bit. Like, how independent are they? Can they say anything that they believe to be true? Separately, when you have an algorithmic ecosystem where different shows feed each other, and you have bigger shows that feed smaller shows and help them grow. If you want to criticize, if you disagree with one of the bigger shows, and you're part of this ecosystem, you're doing so at severe professional risk, severe financial risk, because that bigger show can nuke all other shows within their ecosystem by crushing
punch down, but also the way that the audience perceives it. Like if they're big fans of the bigger outlet.
Exactly.
So there's some
now on the other
there,
but on the other hand, being singularly funded by one person, I think is not a good thing long term either. So I've actually, pushed us internally to grow our small dollar base of subscribers, and we're getting to a decent place.
Yeah.
I'd like to see us at some type of a balance. Like
Yeah,
I
that's why I think that people, who are independent can balance each other out. And I think if the audience gets upset, like if you made yourself out to be like this Bernie Sanders fan or repeat whatever a bigger channel says, then they're gonna have some expectations. But
Mhm.
if you're evolving with them and they're taking baby steps to try to raise their consciousness, I don't think there would be a problem. But I mean, there's gonna be some that are better at being an independent journalist than others.
Mhm.
So I just that's my view. Uh,
I like to be able to say like whatever it is that I feel is the conclusion that I've reached, honestly and intellectually,
mhm.
and share that without worrying that it's gonna like tank my channel or you know blow up my Substack. Um, I have a Substack and I do, I'm now guest hosting Rising here and there, but I can live without those things. I also feel like this. I also feel like I'm at a place in my career where I've done enough good work, and I have enough of a track record that I'm going to be okay. And so that also gives me a level of independence. Like I don't need to stay where I am um,
Yeah, I just think
at
that
this point.
at least with getting crowdfunding, you're the people will know like you're on their side, and you're not going to be working for somebody that we're supposed to be fighting against.
For sure,
But
but then what if you tell them something that they don't like, that they don't want to hear?
well, then
And what if you're right
then
though? What if you're right and they haven't
then
thought
the
something like,
information should just speak for itself. Like the
yeah,
best independent journalists are the ones that stick to the objective facts.
right? Do you
So
but
you can go like, here's the documents. They speak for itself. Like you can give them Bernie Sanders' voting record. If they don't like it, I'm gonna be like, hey,
mhm.
like his voting record speaks for itself. I'm not making anything up. It's not my opinion at all. Here's just his voting record.
Right,
What
and
can I
that's
tell
why
you guys?
I think it's also important to condition your viewers to expect that from you, to like expect
Hmm.
sometimes that they're not going to agree with you, but they should
Yeah,
always trust that you're giving them the straight story. Um,
yeah,
and that's one reason I wanted wanted to have this conversation because, like I said, we don't agree on everything at all, but I get the sense that you're coming at it from a genuine perspective and you're in pursuit of
thank you.
truth. And so um, I think if readers and viewers like absorb that, then you have more room um, to cut against the grain if you need to at times.
Yeah. So I wanna get to this next question that I have here, which is more about strategy. We talked about your strategy for how to inform. Now it's about uh, how we approach direct action, since you said you support it. However, back during okay, so this is something else. This is about the Intercept censoring people, but we already discussed some of the Intercept, some stuff about the Intercept and how they handle whistleblowers. So this is with the March for Medicare for All. We were
Mm-hmm.
talking about how there were people that were criticizing others that were backing out of the event. Savage Joy here was correcting the record on some of that. So you didn't agree with how to approach with March for Medicare for All. You also didn't agree with Force to Vote, and when people went out there. So I think that for those, I think that we are focusing just on one policy. However, I don't think that we should stop people from going
Right.
out and protesting for that. I would still
Right.
go
But I
out
didn't.
there and
But
show my
so, right.
support. Hang on,
Sure.
let me
Sure.
yeah, yeah. So I think we should still go out and I'll show my support. And then I can just tell people who are out there, or whenever there's time, talk to some of the organizers. I think we should do this with more than just one policy. I think we should do this for everything, with the wars, with $15 minimum wage, with getting money out of politics. So I just wanted to ask you, if you don't like how the March for Medicare for All was, or how the Force to Vote strategy was, what kind of direct action do you support?
So I was fine with the March for Medicare for All. And so let's be fair about what happened here.
Okay.
I was interviewing Charles Booker on another question, I asked him why he backed out of the March for Medicare for All. I then posted the video on Twitter and said that some organizers, had been critical of Booker for dropping out, but here is his answer. Savage Joy took issue with that, but the Medicare for All account, the main account, was so when people were pulling their money, like they were withdrawing, like let's say they gave $50 to Booker and they'd ask for a refund because of the March for Medicare for All. They would then post that on Twitter. You could call that, you can say, okay, maybe that's not an organizer. That's just a person who's supportive of the march. Presumably that person cares enough that they're organizing in their community, but we don't know that. That's somebody who's supportive of Medicare for All march. They're asking for a refund. They're posting an image of their refund. The Medicare for All main account was then giving the eyeball emojis to each one of those. And we can pretend that that's just an emoji. Don't worry about that. That's nothing. It's just silliness. No, come on, be serious. Like, that's encouraging. That is the main account, encouraging supporters.
Well, aside from that, like,
so then separately, I interviewed two Medicare for All organizers on the show and gave them every opportunity to promote the march. It was not like a behind a paywall video. So like those are the two things I did. So first thing was honest, which was then lied about. Like, I think we should acknowledge that. Like, the Medicare for All main account was encouraging, with those silly eyeball emojis, people to ask for refunds against Charles Booker. And then that was the only claim I make. Like, people were dragging Charles Booker for not showing up at the march. Here's why he says he can't come to the march. And then then people are going to spend days coming after me. I do think people need to think about their priorities.
But do you understand why, though? Like, people perceive you as kneecapping these movements. So
yes, I
just want to know, like, what kind of direct action do you actually think is, more productive, if not these?
So, I mean, I got my start actually in the 90s as an anti-globalization protester. That was the movement that kind of led into the Nader campaign. It was kind of destroyed by 9/11. But then, and I write about this in my book, it kind of reemerges as Occupy Wall Street. I think those protests outside the IMF and World Bank and the WTO and around the world at the G8 summits, G20 summits, were extraordinarily effective at bringing attention to globalization and what it was doing both in the US and around the world. I think Occupy Wall Street was tremendous. I think a lot of the protests against Kavanaugh, for instance, did not stop him, but raised the issue. I thought the Women's March brought 5 million people into the streets, and I think shifted.
You see how some of these that you're naming that are more recent are partisan. Like the Medicare marches are a bit more post-partisan. Like, it unites more people since we're trying to give healthcare to all people.
Right. So okay. I mean, so I think all of the people who went to the airport on the first week after Trump was inaugurated and protested the Muslim ban, excellent direct action. There are endless ways that you can effectively engage in direct action and protest and marches. They have to be big. They're called a demonstration for a reason. It has to be a demonstration of power. And if you hold them and they're tiny, then that sets you back because it's a demonstration of a lack of power.
I think it's a start. Like, if you go out and you support some of these small ones, you can help. Like, for example, me as a content creator can go down, live stream it, and help get the word out. And I can voice like how I think it can improve. But I support those efforts.
Sure, I supported that one too. And instead, people spent days like suggesting falsely that I didn't. So yeah.
So when it comes to the Democratic Party, though, like, going back to the question that I asked you when I was on the ground, how long do you think is enough for people to be in this abusive relationship with them?
So yeah, so I don't think it's an emotional question. It's not about people's feelings about their relationship with,
Yeah.
like, it's not a friend. It's not like
But
it
it's
is a
about how people are suffering because the Democratic Party isn't doing enough to help people because they passed legislation that's approved by lobbyists.
right. So the party is just, both parties are vehicles that movements and that people use to enact policy. Like that's all they are. Like they and what I was trying to explain earlier is that they have shifted all over the place. Like at one point, the Republican Party was the better party
Mm.
to be a part of if you were an abolitionist, for instance. In the 1960s, for instance, I mean, we're glad we have Medicare and Medicaid, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're glad we have the Civil Rights Act, right? At that time, the party was shot through with outright white supremacists. Some of the leading figures of party chairmen were actual out proud white supremacists. Lyndon Johnson,
Yeah, but those
deep, crazy racist, but got done some things that massively, materially improved the lives of millions of people. And that is the point. The point is not how you feel emotionally about your relationship with this party that fails people over and over. The point is to materially improve the lives of millions of people. And if people have a better idea, then they should do that. Like that's great. Like the Whig Party collapsed, and
so
in its wake, a bunch of parties came in and won, and the Republican Party won out. And so
I agree that it doesn't matter which party is in power, that we have to apply pressure no matter who. But
mhm.
what it seems like is when you when you are defending some of these politicians who aren't doing enough to help people, it seems like you're telling people to still be reliant on this party and that we should still be voting for them when really it doesn't matter because they're all bought off by the same people. So we should be applying pressure no matter who is there, right?
I
And
do
so
think.
why should we be voting for this party if they're not actually helping us and they're working for these lobbyists that right there that approve the legislation that they pass?
Well, let me ask you this. I don't think, based on Trump refusing to drop the charges against Julian Assange, even though he wanted to, and B, his behavior around the withdrawal from Afghanistan, I don't have any confidence whatsoever that he would have actually carried through if he were reelected with this withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think the war machine and the deep state would have continued to pressure him to punt and punt and punt, and he'd have made the date for withdrawal May of 2025 and just kicked it down the road. What do you think?
Yeah, they're all kicking the can down the road. Like it, like I was saying, like it doesn't matter who's there. They're
I
just
don't think.
they're gonna
Wait,
give a surface level
but
appearance like they're trying to help us, but really all they do is kick the can down the
no,
road.
but we like the United States left the Afghan government. Those warlords have collapsed. The Taliban is now in control in Afghanistan. Like that's a material change. Like we're out of Afghanistan. It's true that we're sending in troops to help keep the airport open and get people out of there. But that there is a massive material change on the ground, and I think people should acknowledge that they didn't think that was going to happen. And so, what I what I'm saying is that sometimes there is a difference. At the same time, Democrats need to be relentlessly pushed. They're only going to do the right thing if it's their last option.
Hmm. Okay. So you're saying that the presidents are going to do what they think is the best thing to do if it's their last option.
It's kind of a
What I,
paraphrase of a Winston Churchill.
okay.
But right, they would
So
rather like, yeah.
I was thinking that, maybe there's a like Biden, for example, has a 40-year track record of doing whatever his donors tell him to do and the State Department tells him to do. Trump, in my opinion, is no different. I wasn't buying that he personally wanted to get them out, or maybe he did, but at the end of the day, I think he was still a tool of the establishment, just like Biden. So I think that there is something else that is not being told to us about the reason for why he's pulling troops out. I think it's a good thing he's pulling troops out, but what comes next? Like
Right.
the Taliban is in power now. Did they negotiate a deal? Are they going to use the Taliban to use them like to help the U.S. In their competition against Iran and China and Russia? Because at the end of the day, they're trying to get those resources from that country in Afghanistan. I don't think
Mhm.
that's going to stop.
Right. The war goes on. The empire, continues um, to push its tentacles as far as it can. But the world does change. Events are not completely predetermined, um, and we just have to, I think, show humility in what we are certain of can happen in the future.
Mm.
And so, and
Yeah.
the other
But
question
you
would be
get what
like,
the point I'm trying to
sure,
make
yeah,
though,
yeah, no,
right?
I no,
It's
I
like we shouldn't, it
absolutely.
doesn't matter if we vote for Trump or Biden. Like they're still going to be doing things that the establishment tells them to do. So then what's the
Sure,
point of
but
voting for the lesser of two evils?
and so the other point that I was trying to make in telling the history of the two parties is that this is really the first time that the parties have finally been sorted ideologically. Like you have center left and left people, and now basically centrist, center, and center left people in the Democratic Party. You have center right and far right people in the Republican Party. That has never happened before. It, for the last 200 years, the parties, right now we're like this, right? One
Mm.
one party over here, the other party over there. For the last 200 years, they've been like this, and they were like this for the purpose of making sure that the country couldn't make decisions on big questions because you had people in both parties who were on each side of the major questions, whether it was slavery or something else. And so they just fought over crumbs, fought over patronage, etc. This is the first time that they've been ideologically sorted. What that means is we can't predict what's going to happen in the future based on partisan behaviors in the past. And it means if whichever faction wins within the party becomes the driver of that party, and the others have to get in line behind them.
Yeah.
The 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 center corporate wing won in the last primary. On the right, the Trump wing is ascendant, and everybody else has to get in line behind them. So that means with the right maneuvering, that the left actually has a chance of taking over the Democratic Party for the first time ever. And Jonathan Smucker has written a book on this, and he has a phrase that he calls the margin of maneuver. In other words, Bernie Sanders in 2020 got within the margin of maneuver. That means that it wasn't a structural obstacle that stood in his way. It was maneuvering by the establishment in which they outmaneuvered the left.
Mm.
And they outmaneuvered him in a matter of just days, from Nevada to Super Tuesday. But he was within the margin of maneuver from winning. And if that's the case, like, to me, that's the left's vehicle. But you have to win that maneuvering. If somebody has another option, go for it. The Green Party's not it. Like maybe in some local elections, maybe if they wanted to run in a congressional district or two, Movement for People's Party is like 4 years old and hasn't fielded a candidate, or maybe it's fielded like half a dozen candidates. I don't know the exact number, but not many. I don't think they've ever had one actually get to an election yet. And we're at a crisis. Like we don't have, like if they've taken
Wh-
4 years to get to this point, good Lord, like
which is
we don't have
why
time for this.
exactly we don't have time for this. Which is why I think that we shouldn't be wasting our time, putting our energy, giving donations to candidates, only for them to take their sweet time, kicking the can down the road even further and further until what? Like how many more people are going to get kicked out of their homes? How many more people are going to lose their health care? How many more people are going to be inundated in debt with for college, for healthcare. So,
Well, I
like,
would.
that's what
I
we're gonna get with both parties, which is why I don't see electoral politics at all, whether it be the Democrats
But
or Republicans or a
here's the
third
thing,
party
and
who
Matt,
doesn't have an efficient plan for how to overcome how the private election system suppresses them. Which is why I think the only thing we should do is direct action, mutual aid, opting out of the system to take power away from the corporations.
like
And that's what we should be doing. It
I
doesn't
can
matter who is in office.
I get the idea of not thinking that it matters, but why are you so sure? You're so like here's what's weird to me, that you're so sure it doesn't matter, that not only do you not want to participate in it, you don't think anybody else who has a different analysis should participate in it either. Where does that certainty come from? And related to that, I wish more independent YouTubers.
Because what are they giving their money and their vote to? Just more suffering?
So it's about their money.
Yeah, it's about their survival. I mean, you need money to
So then
survive.
so the money should be going where?
The money should be going to community organizing, community building, right? And then at least with that, it's
What if
applying.
those communities then run candidates and want to get
If they
involved
run
in,
candidates,
or lobby the local city council, or
we discuss like the like what could happen within these communities like every Thursday on this show with people. But the thing is, we have to start finding solutions outside of electoral politics, because what we're seeing now is every year these corporations get more and more powerful because of these politicians, right? And the politicians doing the bidding for them, and then our election systems become even more corrupt. They become even more privatized. So it's impossible for any revolutionary to win any election.
the related question I wanted to ask you is, why do you think the independent YouTubers haven't talked about this 3.5
Because
trillion
they're
dollar
still the what, the 3.5 trillion dollar.
reconciliation package that's going through now?
I can only tell you why I haven't. Well, why I have or have not talked about it. I've talked about it, and when I had my guests on to talk about it, we said, why does it matter if all these legislations get approved by lobbyists that we're supposed to be fighting against? So there's going to be parts in those bills that are going to make these lobbyists more powerful.
So you just think definitionally nothing good can come out of it? I just don't
We just
agree.
have to keep exposing, how our election system, how our legislation process, how it works and how it's against us. And we need more time to figure out solutions. Because what I think a lot of independent content creators are doing now, they're realizing this, right? It's still in the beginning phases. People were initially having their hopes on candidates like Bernie Sanders and having their hopes on candidates like AOC and the squad members, but they're realizing that that's not the way forward anymore, because then they sell out for political expediency. They give up on their promises because they want to maintain their career. And so we have to have more conversations about solutions and like talking about the problems. Yeah, that's we should be still talking about that, but I think a lot of people already understand that. So I do think more effort should be put in independent media to discuss more about solutions outside of electoral politics and also outside of uh, serial protest, because that can only get you so far, right?
I do
Having
think.
only doing protests and that only being your only focus, that can also lead you down a hamster wheel.
Right.
So we have to do
Yeah.
more than that.
And I do think, and take this for what it's worth. I think if the independent YouTube world pushes the message too hard, that uh, people should stop giving money to progressive politicians and instead should give money to the independent YouTube world, people are going to be like,
Or give it for mutual aid. It
people are going
doesn't
to be
have
like,
to
wait
be
a
like
minute,
giving it to us, right?
right? But mutual aid is like, that's great, but that's not structurally like upending anything.
I think that if we dedicate more time, to give our money to people who are suffering, or people who are doing a service like informing people, I think that would be more productive than giving our energy to these and money to these
Charity,
politicians
right? Charity's
who are
good.
not
Charity's good, and
who are
everybody
going to
should
sell
do.
out.
Charity's good. Everybody should do more charity, but charity's not a revolution. That's all. That's my only point. Yeah.
It's not just charity though. It's community organizing and trying to, have these communities that are not so dependent on these corporations.
Yeah. No, but anyway, we should talk again soon. I appreciate the time. I got a couple stories I got to finish up, and then I got to get to bed because I got to be up early for this show.
I really hope you can look more into, Piero Midyar. Hopefully, like you can, if you really do have more freedom, in the Intercept, like you said, as much freedom as you say, I would like to see more information about the owner of the Intercept, Piero Midyar, and what he's doing.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good. All right. Have a great evening.
All right. Take care, Ryan. Thanks
Talk
for being
later.
on.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
You got it.
All right. Unfortunately, the Rockfin stream was not able to start. There was an issue there. I'll look into it later. I'm going to have an interview in about an hour and a couple minutes. So I just want to say I'm currently going through a lot in my personal life. I was feeling tired. So I did the best I could with the energy I have right now with what I'm going through. So I hope you guys can be understanding of that. I try to push back as much as I could. But yeah, guys, just let me know what you guys think. I'll keep pushing back. We'll see if he can come back on the show. I feel like I asked enough questions that he hasn't been asked before. Like, why isn't he looking into Piero Midyar? I haven't seen anybody asking him that question. I haven't seen anyone asking why he doesn't choose to be an independent journalist aside from, instead of working for a corporation. And I myself, I'm still learning a lot about what is the best path forward in terms of solutions, which is why we have to have more and more conversations about this. And we're going to do that tomorrow, just like we do every Thursday, to talk about solutions. I'm not going to know everything on that, which is why I'm having these conversations with people. But I think we really need to focus our energy on taking power away from these corporations. And the way to do that is not through giving money to these politicians that are going to be serving them. All right, so thank you guys very much for watching. And don't forget to stay informed, guys. I'll see you guys in a little bit because I'll go live again. Take care.